Guys, I mean, this guy
is bald.
Oh, this guy. This guy is bald, but he was the original Jean Valjean
Oh my gosh.
of Les Miserables. 안녕하세요 여러분. 오늘은 정말 대단하고 유명하고 저한테는 너무 존경스러운 배우분을 모셨는데요. 이분은 배우뿐만 아니라 음악감독 그리고 교수 그리고 뉴욕시 안에서 브로드웨이 베테랑으로서 여러 활동을 하고 계시는 분입니다. 저한테 너무 소중한 분이시고 저희가 이번에 웨스트사이드 스토리를 준비하면서 가장 누구를 소개를 해야 될까 생각을 했을 때 이분이 가장 먼저 떠오르더라고요. 바로 알렉스를 소개하겠습니다.
Hello.
Hi, Alex. So I'll be speaking English from now on. It's just it's just so you don't have to listen to me speaking Korean.
It's beautiful. I just don't speak it, so
That's all right. So I guess we wanna start off with introducing who you are, like all the great things you've done, and possibly what part you took in West Side Story.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, as Hechan said, I'm Alexander Jiminani. I'm an actor, a musical director, conductor, educator, and artistic director. I think, a lot of my background has been, I've been lucky enough to work on a lot of Stephen Sondheim musicals, both as an actor and as a musical director. Most recently, I was in some big revivals as an actor on Broadway. I took over as the father in My Fair Lady up at Lincoln Center, and 2018 did the revival of Carousel on Broadway, which I have very many fond memories of. And also got to do another fun thing I got to do was play King George in Hamilton, the Chicago Company, when we opened, 2016 maybe, something like that. West Side Story came into my life, well, as a fan at a very young age. I've been listening to the music forever. My father, Paul Jiminani, is also a musical director.
Right, we can't forget about Paul.
No, of course,
yeah.
He's the sort of, the grand poobah, the old, 40 plus Broadway shows and multiple recordings.
The legend. I'm sure we will take time. I want to have a section about literally a content about him because he's just done so many things on Broadway and the impact he had.
Yes.
But did that also include some impact whereas you started going in for music directing as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think I've always done sort of small music direction all the way through, like from high school all the way up through college and as a professional. But it really has come more into what I'm doing more on a regular basis in the past maybe 5 years. I started working, my first big musical directing job was the off-Broadway revival of Merrily We Roll Along, which is one of the Sondheim shows. And then I think because of that, Steve asked me to work on his new musical that he was working on before he passed. And then because of that, he asked me to work on West Side Story.
Wait, so Stephen Sondheim asked you to work on it?
He did. It was a really interesting journey. I mean, Steve is a hero to me. And
wow.
So that's a good phone call to get, right? When he's asking you to do it.
It must be funny for him to ask, to be such good friends with your dad.
Yes.
And to ask his son to music on a Broadway show West Side Story.
Yeah, I mean, well, as my dad has taken less jobs, as he's, he's not retired, but kind of.
Sure.
It's an amazing show of faith in me and my abilities that the master of the art form is asking me to do this. And I think what I have to offer as a musical director, coming from an acting background is a non-traditional way to be a music director. Most of the time, MDs, and they're great, are born from paying their dues in the pit. They're rehearsal pianists, and then they work their way up to playing in an orchestra pit, and then they become associate music directors, and then they, et cetera, and work their way up. And I kind of have this non-traditional way of going. I mean, I've always studied music, and I've always been around music and making music in many forms and interpreting music. And this just sort of came, and I think the thing that Steve liked about my approach was that it was very character and actor based. So yeah, West Side came on into my orbit, and yeah, we did about 2.5 years of like auditions and workshops and
2.5 years. So our subscribers,
Yeah.
they are familiar with musical theater, but they're not so familiar with the workshop, the production.
Oh, okay.
I think that's. Maybe we can just touch upon that. It's
Sure.
such a full topic
There's just a long road
before it actually.
before you
opens.
buy a ticket, yeah, and go see it.
Right.
And if it's a pre-existing, that there's variety within that. So if it's a brand new musical like Hamilton,
Right.
was in development for 8 or 9 years before it ever had a performance. And those different stages can look like making quick demos, meaning you hire an actor or you yourself, the composer, sits at a piano and records a song and sends it to a director, a producer, the people helping you develop the show. Or it could be a reading, what they call a reading, which is usually a short process. Could be 2 days, could be 5 days, 8 days maybe, where you usually have a cast of performers reading the script, singing the songs, really not delving into the acting process, but really to hear the piece out loud for the writers.
So it's for the creative.
It's for the creative team. And then you have a stage called a workshop. And there are lots of permutations of what a workshop is, mostly based on length of time and where the piece is in the process. So if it's something that is like, they know they are going to go to Broadway, let's say in September, they may have a workshop in April, the April prior, that is maybe like 4 or 5 weeks, where they're basically getting a lot of the show on its
that's
feet.
like ready to go.
So that it's ready to go.
Except it's in the theater.
Yes.
Got it. Yeah.
Because once you're on the production end of things, like once you usually you start rehearsals. If it's a big musical like West Side was, we started 2.5 months before we opened, and that was pretty unique. And then so you start rehearsals. You're in rehearsal 6 days a week, usually 10 to 6. And if you're on the creative team, that means many more hours.
8
to forever.
12.
Yeah, exactly. Because you're dealing with emails and changes and all
West
this.
Side Story was a revival.
Yes.
What is a revival?
A revival. That's a really good question. But well, just because a lot of things are called revivals, that covers a lot of ground. I mean, something like the Carousel that we did, for instance, there were definitely some changes to the original, but nothing really structurally different. There weren't major cuts made. A couple things got cut, a couple little scenes got trimmed.
Are they allowed to do that?
They need permission from the authors, and if the authors are...
What if the authors are no longer living?
So there are people who hold the licensing agreements,
Got it.
or there are foundations basically that hold the rights to produce the musical. So if you wanted to produce a musical, you would go to the people who hold the rights to that musical, which is a licensing company. So the big ones are MTI, Music Theatre International, and Rodgers and Hammerstein. There's Tams Whitmark, there's Samuel French, there's other ones, but a lot of the musicals are MTI, and the Rodgers and Hammerstein canon is generally with the
Are those the musicals possibly from? Those are the companies if Korean companies from Korea wants to do, like, let's say Les Miserables, they would contact them.
I believe so, yes.
Okay. They handle the international productions.
Yes.
Got it.
And I know that there are departments within MTI, for instance, that deal with international productions.
Wow.
So specifically, maybe even just like European productions or Asian productions, or I'm not sure how it's all broken down, but there are different departments that deal with different areas of the world that want to produce musicals.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I mean, also not to mention, guys. I mean, this guy
is bald.
Oh, this guy. This guy is bald, but he was the original Jean Valjean.
Oh my gosh.
Of Les Miserables in the revival. Now that we know what the revival is.
Yeah. So
I mean, Korean fans love Les Miserables.
Well,
I mean,
why would you not? It's amazing.
The reason why I started musical theater was. Can I repeat that? The reason why I started musical theater was because I watched the 25th anniversary.
Yeah.
And that was just. It was such a pivotal moment, and then I found out that you were the original Valjean in Les Miserables. I mean, I mean, we can talk about that later because today's about West Side Story.
Yeah, West Side Story.
Mhm.
And I've done a lot of revivals in my career, and some of them have been closer to what a remounting is, and some of them have been more like what West Side Story was, which is a real reimagining.
Like, yes.
I mean,
when I saw it, it was not. I don't think I could have imagined this show being up in like the 50s.
Well, yes.
It was so contemporary.
Yeah, and I think that was what the director really wanted to pursue, and I think in many ways it was really interesting, and this sort of dystopian reality set against this lush music and a real contemporary lens on the violence and the culture clash was a really interesting. You know, it's one of the things I love about the movie actually is.
Ooh, before we get into the movie,
Yeah.
cut and start over.